A free association allows one to voluntarily associate with anyone one chooses. The idea of free association applies that individuals associate in collective groups, whether they exist in trade, work, friendships, beliefs, and so on. In any free society, all human action should be voluntary rather than forced or coerced. For this reason, left libertarians are against the idea of the social contract where the state assumes itself to be the guardian of the public. Bakunin laments at the concept that one could possibly consent to this agreement when he says, "A tacit contract, that is to say, a wordless and consequently a thoughtless, will-less contract, a revolting nonsense, an absurd fiction, and what is more, a wicked fiction, an unworthy hoax, for it assumes that while I was in a state of not being able to will, to think, to speak, I bound myself and all my descendants, only by virtue of having let myself be victimized without raising any protest, into perpetual slavery." A social contract is antithetical to freedom since one neither volunteers nor freely associates within a given territory. Voluntarism, on the other hand, implies promising, and promising implies that individuals are capable of independent judgment and rational deliberation. In addition, it presupposes that they can evaluate and change their actions and relationships. So it is only in free association, created by free agreement, can individuals develop, grow, and express their liberty. However, not all free associations are the same. While some people pretend they are not. Peter Kropotkin makes a distinction between two types of associations when he says, "There is a free one which is entered upon humanity by free consent as a free choice between different courses equally open to each of the agreeing parties. And there is an enforced agreement imposed by one party upon the other, and accepted by the latter from sheer necessity. In fact, it is no agreement at all. It is a mere submission to necessity." Unhappily, the great bulk of what are now described as agreements belong to the latter category. When a workman sells his labor to the employer and knows perfectly well that some part of the value of his produce will be unjustly taken by the employer, when he sells it without even the slightest guarantee of being employed so much as 6 consecutive months, it is a sad mockery to call that a free contract. Clearly, voluntary entry is a necessary but not sufficient condition to defend an individual's liberty. This is to be expected as it ignores or takes for granted the social conditions in which agreements are made and, moreover, ignores the social relationships created by them. Context must always be accounted for when we speak of human action. Just as Bakunin rejected the social contract, he also rejects any contracts with another individual on any footing but the utmost equality and reciprocity, as this would alienate his or her freedom, and so would be a relationship of voluntary servitude with another individual. Anyone making such a contract in a free society would be devoid of any sense of personal dignity. Only self-managed associations can create relationships of equality rather than the subordination between its members. This is why libertarian socialists believe in participatory democracy, for it is autonomy and democracy which we identify with freedom, and we assess freedom as the highest human objective. Any association that is not free is based on force or coercion. All this brings up another subject. How does one achieve a left libertarian society without the use of force? Libertarian socialists are frequently accused of wanting to use violence to bring about their society. This is absolutely false. Anarchists do not support the idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat because it uses violent coercive means to achieving its end. Furthermore, the dictatorship of the proletariat runs right over anarchist ideals such as reducing the power of the state, free association, voluntarism, individual autonomy, self-organization, and so forth. When you centralize power, that power system becomes vulnerable to attack by outside forces. Syndicalism is akin to guerrilla warfare since it decentralizes its base. We can also ask, how does a free society develop in the context of a dictatorship, whether it is the dictatorship of one person or the proletariat? The dictatorship of the proletariat, as far as I know, has been tried with no success and so far has only led to totalitarian states. Whenever the subject of a means to an end is undertaken within socialist circles, the first question is whether to attack the state or capitalism. Most libertarian socialists choose capitalism because they believe that states are the product of the ownership class and wish to attack the source rather than its product. For those of you not familiar with anarcho-syndicalism, let me give you a brief overview. In a nutshell, anarchists organize unions in their workplace and then network them throughout a geographic area to form a federation. Once this is done, they go on strike to effectively run the companies out of business. At this point, the workers take over the company and run it themselves. After that, communities essentially organize themselves and start running their own communities. What should be understood is that nothing here violates free association or voluntary action. In fact, it highlights them because an anarchist society should be an organic outgrowth of the means to achieving a free society. Anarcho-syndicalism doesn't use violent means to achieving its end. However, syndicalists are also not pacifists, nor are they naive. If violence is used by business owners or the state, that violence can be returned. I think even the black bloc tactic can be justified in this context, since both the state and the private sector are extremely violent, with both groups being highly entangled. There are a couple caveats when it comes to any union. First, anarcho-syndicalism has its own problems. Unions tend to be reformist in nature. In fact, during the Spanish Civil War, the CNT was doing exactly this. It really took the entry of the FAI to pressure them into anarchist ends. Also, anarcho-syndicalism is just one strategy, and I don't think that it alone can produce a libertarian socialist society. Many of us, including myself, are not in a union. Therefore, things like protest, dual power, direct action, distribution of information, community self-management, alternative banking systems, and so on should all be utilized. All these strategies allow people to come together to discuss, educate, and organize. All this is self-empowering, allowing networks of people to freely create tactics to respond to powerful interests. This is especially true of syndicalism, where workers can inform each other of the ends they wish to achieve, plan actions they desire, and practice self-management techniques. All of this allows the idea of liberty to flourish, plus it begins the transformation of society itself. As the Syndicalist Union, the IWW, says in its preamble, "It is the historic mission of the working class to do away with capitalism. The army of production must be organized not only for everyday struggle with capitalists, but also to carry on production when capitalism shall be overthrown. By organizing industrially, we are forming the structure of a new society within the shell of the old."